Hey guys, Chad Hoover, KayakBassFishing TV, and I'm back at you with another when you should use this instead of this, or this instead of this. We're going to compare spinnerbaits to chatterbaits. Why you should use them, when you should use them, and yeah, all that. All right guys, so here's the deal. Let's talk about when do I use a chatterbait instead of a spinnerbait, and a spinnerbait instead of a chatterbait. So for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to get into the specifics of blade configuration, size, and weights of a spinnerbait. This is more of a general overview on why I use a spinnerbait instead of a chatterbait, and a chatterbait instead of a spinnerbait. So let's get started talking about why I use a chatterbait. Okay, I'm using a chatterbait mostly in warmer conditions. When it's just warm enough that I stop using a square bill, I generally switch to a chatterbait. And when it's just getting too cool to use a chatterbait, or getting cool enough to use a square bill, I kind of back off of using my chatterbait some. That's where my spinnerbait comes into play. Before it gets warm enough for me, you know, that 55 to 60 degree water temperature to use the chatterbait, I'm a big fan of throwing spinnerbaits, okay? I also like a spinnerbait when I want to keep the lure in the strike zone longer. So before the fish get really aggressive and after they've gotten lethargic, either for the feeding time itself or the time of the year or the seasonal progression, I'm going to use a spinnerbait more. Now, bass have a critical flicker factor, say that fast 10 times, of 55. Humans have a critical flicker factor of 28. All right, what that means, 28, 29. What that means is that's how many frames per second they see. So if they saw one of our movies, they would be able to see every frame as it goes by. The reason that that's important is the rate of flicker, if you will, and the ability for them to identify this as a fraud in a chatterbait is actually more acute the colder the water is. And so I think spinnerbaits still are the warmer the water is, and less acute the colder the water is. So when I'm fishing a chatterbait in that warmer water, I'm getting away with that less vibration, less flash, and I'm giving them less of an opportunity to identify my bait as a fraud. And so that's why I like a chatterbait. When it comes to spinnerbaits, I really like to vary my blade size and shape, color, contrast, and even the way that it flickers, you know, based on how fast I'm retrieving it, how cold the water is, and the time of year, or the pressure on the body of water that I'm fishing. So let me talk about spinnerbaits. I've talked to you about chatterbaits. If you want to know more about when I fish chatterbaits, head over to my video of chatterbaits versus square bill crankbaits, and I'll talk about that and the type of rod that you should use. So let's talk about when I'll use the spinnerbait instead of the chatterbait. It's when those fish are less active, before they get really active and when they start to taper off in their activity. Like I said, whether it's time of day, time of the feeding period, or time of year. When the water starts to cool off in the spring and I'm starting to work my way into the back of creeks, I really like to go back to a spinnerbait. In my top 5 winter patterns video, I did, or summer into fall video, I didn't talk about, let me do that again. In my top 5, you know, best late summer into fall patterns video, I didn't talk about the spinnerbait as one of those primary choices, and there's a reason for that. I don't like spinnerbaits on pressured waters. I don't like spinnerbaits on places where the water's getting run over, you know, a couple of times a day or several times a day by other anglers. If I can get into isolated water that's public, or if I can get into a private pond or a private lake or somewhere that has less pressure, a spinnerbait is a go-to presentation. It's got a lot of flash, a lot of realism, and until that bass is a little bit seasoned to it, they don't identify it as a fraud. So let's talk about that identified as a fraud concept. And what that means is, as that bait spins, if it doesn't spin fast enough, if you don't have quality swivels, if you don't have a quality spinnerbait and it spins too slow, they're going to be able to see the individual rotations of the blade and realize it's not real. What you want them to see is the flicker. You want them to see that bait moving across and it looks like a shad or a bait fish swimming by, and they don't get to, like I said, identify it as a fraud. So I like willow leaf blades when I'm fishing them fast, Colorado blades when I'm fishing it slow. So let's talk about a Colorado blade when you're fishing it slow. One of the things that you can do when you're trying to keep a bass from getting a good look at it is use a dark colored blade, or you can use what I call the blinker effect. You can make one side dark and one side light. That's chartreuse, white, black, you know, anything that's a major contrast. So as that blade flips, they see it chartreuse, white, chartreuse, white. They see it black, white, black, white, or they see it black, chrome, and it just breaks it up and it makes it that much harder for them to identify that bait as a fraud. But the main reason I'm gonna choose a spinnerbait is when I want that lure to stay in the strike zone longer, when I wanna hold my rod tip up and reel it a little slower, when I wanna give that fish more time to make the decision that it wants to eat it, and in the times when the fish are feeding up coming out of the winter, heading into spring, and when they're feeding up heading into the fall, heading into winter. So that's late summer and early fall. That's definitely fall into winter, and it's definitely winter heading into spring. So guys, those are the reasons that I choose a chatterbait, the reasons that I choose a spinnerbait, and why I choose which one when I choose the one that I choose, and why you should choose them the way I choose them. Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, so give this video a big thumbs up if you like it. Leave a comment below if you've got anything to offer. As always, we're a community here. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Welcome to the Kayak Bass Fishing Brotherhood. Leave a comment below and comment on the comments. Help each other out. Let's all turn this into a learning environment where we can learn more. We can all become better anglers. We can have more fun out on the water, more success, and more success leads to, you know, more passion for bassing. Anyway, so I'll see you guys next time. Kayak Bassing TV. Ha! Hold on, wait a second. You mean to tell me if a bass was watching a TV show, they'd be able to see like the photo pieces, like a flicker thing, like one of them old movies? I mean, they can see that good, huh? So you want that thing to spin, right? You won't spin back like that, and but what about the other one? Like, how you want that one right there? Because you know what I mean? Because that, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what I mean? Right there? Like, that's why some spit. Like that? Like that right there? Anyway, but right there, so you mean what? So like a flicker, like a flicker, like a, you know, that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Right? Yeah.